165 schools are opened as at yesterday. So we're getting the numbers up. In the West, we have a lot of challenges in the West, but we are working through those, and we're hoping that within the next 2 weeks, at least all students who have external exams, whether it's CSEC, CAPE, or PEP, will be back. So we're prioritizing those students in the West. It will take some time to rebuild schools, but we do need to get those particular students out as quickly as we can while we look at our temporary structures. I think those are all the updates. I will go to the questions for those who are here first, and then I have some that were sent in online. All right, microphone here. Who's treating with microphones today? Is there no one dealing with microphones? All right, please stand, say your name and your entity.
Good morning, Adira Truth from Roots 96.1 FM.
Nice to have Roots here.
Thank you. My question is to Mr. Clark. Mr. Clark, given the repeated aquifer-driven flooding in areas such as Content, is the Water Resources Authority recommending any technical limits or guidelines on development in those zones?
All right, good morning, and thanks for your question. The fact is that whenever an application for development is made, I think it's made to the municipal corporations, it's made to the parish councils basically. And then because the parish councils inherently will not have all the expertise in-house, they then pass those applications around. So they'll go to the fire brigade, they'll go to the health, they'll come to water resources, they'll go to NEPA, wherever. And a part of the WRA's response is to analyze the application, analyze the area that it is, and then make a recommendation. So the recommendations do come from, there are recommendations that come from the Water Resources Authority, whether in an area is flood prone, so care needs to be taken, whether the area is, for instance, a fault, because we do monitor this sort of thing, if there's a fault or a fault line in the area, whatever it is. So the recommendations are made, and then now it is then now the final decisions are made otherwise elsewhere, and that is what happens. But essentially speaking, there is a very robust development process that is here in Jamaica.
All right, thank you very much. All right, next question.
Good morning, everyone. Katie Paul from NCUFM News. I have 3 questions, one for...
3, okay. Remember, we have to be quick, but yes. Go ahead, give us the 3.
So, for Minister Samuda, how has the hurricane affected the initiative to implement renewable energy to power water systems, and how soon can NWC...
Can you repeat that question, the first one?
Yes, so how has the hurricane affected the initiative to implement renewable energy to power water systems, and how soon can NWC get back to that? For ODPEM, in light of the climate change and repeated storms, are there any plans to update Jamaica's National Disaster Preparedness Framework or introduce new technology for early warning and coordination? And for Minister Dixon, you talked about the schools that were completely destroyed. Are there any plans to revise school construction standards to make them more climate resilient?
Yes. All right, thank you, Minister.
The NWC is the single largest consumer of energy in Jamaica as an entity, meaning we are also the single largest customer of the JPS. It means JPS's stability is also tied to NWC's stability and consumption, meaning if NWC was to wholesalely remove itself from JPS, bills would actually rise to the remaining customers on the grid. However, as a part of Jamaica's NDCs being its nationally determined contributions towards its climate change mitigation efforts, one of the areas that we will reduce our energy consumption by bringing on renewables is indeed NWC. And this is being carefully selected for areas where it's appropriate so to do, meaning sufficient land space either for wind or solar, and in some cases changing our fuel source and generating source, being using LNG for areas such as Gutters and Pepper, which has the second deepest well in Jamaica, and one of the most expensive pumping units. So yes, we are bringing on renewable energy. We would have brought on renewable energy with the commissioning of a new solar park at our Red Hills pumping station which serves that general area, I think going up to about Swain Spring, right, Delano, somewhere in that general area. So we're already pumping using renewables. We expect to commence construction on our floating solar system at the Mona Reservoir, which will bring some 45 megawatts onto the grid sometime early next year. So we are well advanced in bringing on renewables for LNG-related solutions, which also bring down the emissions because it's a cleaner source of fuel, and we're working with JPS for other microgrid type solutions. So it's a full suite of energy projects, which also include the purchase of over $1 billion of new efficient pumps, as many of the pumps that we use are 70 and 80 years old, so are particularly inefficient in terms of their power consumption. Thank you. To the climate change question before Commander Gale comes. Jamaica has completed its national adaptation plan and intends to file it to the UNFCCC very soon as per the programs. Now that national adaptation plan determines how strong our resilience is, how our infrastructure is to the risks that we face. We're also now using what's called the JSTRAT. It is the Jamaica Systemic Risk Assessment Tool, which is housed at PIOG and runs on a supercomputer. So Jamaica was the first nation on earth to evaluate the climate risk to all of its infrastructure. And that is both private and public infrastructure. So we've taken all the thousands of data points of JPS, the thousands of data points from the airports, from the NWC, from your banks, etc., from our coastline to determine what the climatic risk is. And that feeds into the disaster risk management plan. But
all right, as as Commander comes up, there are some other questions for you, Commander. So
Okay.
just noting, I will just give them to you after.
All right, happy. So, as with any event of this nature, a significant after-action review will be committed, and through that we'll then determine what parts of our processes need to change, and then what technology we need to be brought on board. So we can expect that robust after-action review process to be engaged shortly after we've been able to settle a little bit. Thank you.
All right. While you are here, let me find those questions that are specifically for you. Hold on, let me get back to them. Just need to find them. There was a long list of them. Here we are. Some residents across communities in Northwest St. Elizabeth have complained that no relief supplies have been delivered in these areas. The other one is, are there areas that are still marooned? And then the next one is, as far as you're aware, are there uncollected bodies in any community impacted by the hurricane? So Northwest St. Elizabeth, marooned and unclaimed bodies.
All right, so I'm not tracking that we have not been able to reach all communities, but I will relook at the distribution plan to ensure that we get very, very granular. As we move into this phase of the relief efforts, I would have mentioned in the earlier discourse today the number of hubs, warehouses, the 22 locations being manned by the JDF, and I'll also add that there are further plans to get farther into the communities as they open up. So whilst we might be dropping in larger population areas, I could understand that maybe some smaller subsets. So we look at that. At the moment, there are no maroon communities as described on Tuesday, i.e. communities where there is no vehicular access. I'm tracking at the moment that we have access to all communities.
I think those were all the questions I have for you. I had a question on schools and the construction of schools, which I should answer. It's a very good question. Many of our schools that I've seen that sustained damage, what made me quite unhappy was the fact that last year after Hurricane Beryl, some of those very schools were repaired. And 1 year later, we're back at repairing them. So that's standards of our schools. And so I've asked some of our multilateral partners to work with us to look at the building standards around schools, because it's not acceptable that you have a hurricane 1 year and you fix it and then the next year you're back at it again. And so we will be doing that work. We have to build schools that are climate resilient. There are many schools that have done a tremendous job. They're trying to help themselves, and they'll add a classroom here and a classroom there, or they'll do some work on a new hall or something like that. And in many instances, as I've gone around, a lot of those have been destroyed. And so as we move forward, we're going to have to ensure that even where schools are doing their own fundraising and building structures, that they are built within particular standards. So your question is quite apt, because we have to get climate resilient schools in our country. All right. RJR.
Good morning, Camille Williams from Radio Jamaica / Television Jamaica. The question I have is for Commander Gale. Commander, you said that there are 146,000 structures that sustained major or severe damage in the hurricane. The question I have is how many are houses and how many of those are in the West? All right? And then the other question I have, how many families are now homeless and how many people do you have down as being homeless now?
All right, Commander.
So I can repeat.
So I did mention about 146,000 structures having assessed to have major to severe damage. We're still going through the process now of verified on the ground, but I'll ask the team. They have started looking into it. I'm tracking, however, just about 90,000 households affected and 360 in terms of the person.
360 or 360K?
360K. I did make that mistake on Tuesday as well.
And then also the numbers of buildings. I think you gave the wrong number.
Yeah, I did say 130
yes.
on Tuesdays, so I meant 130,000.
Thank you.
So indicated here the 146,000. In terms of numbers of homeless, that is still being assessed, and I believe Minister has some fresh information. Okay,
we'll get that number for you.
But as I mentioned before, in shelters, just about 1,400 persons in shelters as of today.
All right. I have one here for you too, since you are here. Between you or Minister Mackenzie, you could answer this, and this is from the Gleaner. There's a question about number of disabled persons in shelters as well as infants. Do we have those numbers? And if you don't, can you provide that to the Gleaner, please? Sure, come, Minister.
Good morning, everybody. I don't want to give the information which is incomplete. We have just completed the assessment. I just received the information, and I want to be sure before we put this information out. So this information will be provided as soon as we have gone through and have verified all the information that is presented here. So we have it, we have an idea what the numbers are, but as I said before, we want to be precise when we give the numbers.
All right, so all those questions that were asked that you didn't get your precise numbers, we will work with Minister Mackenzie and ODPEM and send them to you directly. All right, I think those are all the questions we have today, and we are at the end of today's update. And just to note again, there are a lot of Jamaicans that are hurting. There are a lot of Jamaicans that don't have a place over their head. Yesterday, as I saw a little boy, it was a little girl, she came over to me and she was talking to me and she just hugged me. And she said, "My house mashed down." And she said it several times to me. And she was staying with family in Trelawney because she's from St. James. And there are a lot of children, a lot of adults who are going through a lot of trauma right now, and you feel it heavy in Jamaica. But we just have to do what we can to support everyone. Things aren't perfect. They're definitely not perfect. There are people in St. James with mud all over their house. There are other places that are worried about the rain. I was at Cornwall College yesterday, and one of the young teenagers, very tall and handsome, said the night before, when they heard the rain and the wind, they thought the hurricane had come again. There is a lot of trauma out there, and we just do what we can as government, as people, to support everybody who is hurting. And I thank all of the volunteers that have been going all over Jamaica and supporting these communities that need their support. Every time you take